So Stargirl is finally back. The season 3 premiere aired last week, and I'm a bit late on this review. The second episode is going to be this week in like 2 days, so it's a little late to be doing a review for episode 1. I kind of just wanted to do this because I'm planning on doing a review for the next couple episodes, so I didn't really want to do that without having a review up for episode 1 as well. Plus, with college starting back soon, reviews are probably the only videos I'm going to get up in terms of Stargirl, in terms of most shows. So yeah, but this was a great premiere. I thought it was very much kind of a catch-up episode to see where everyone was, to see where all the characters are. But this show feels so cozy and comfortable. It's like having a great cup of hot chocolate near Christmas, where it's something that you kind of forget about and you don't really think about until the time happens where it comes back, and then you're like, oh my god, I forgot how much I liked this, or I forgot how much I needed this, and I missed this completely. And that's how I felt about Stargirl. I absolutely love season 1, I love season 2, but honestly, I wasn't too hyped going into season 3. That's mainly in part due to the CW and their terrible marketing, because let's be honest, Stargirl season 3 got so little marketing. It got like 2 trailers that weren't really that good, and then it got a poster that also wasn't really that good, in my opinion. I thought the poster for this season looked a lot worse than the seasons 1 and 2 posters did, but that said, the show hasn't felt a quality change in terms of episodes, because I thought that this episode was still very much on par with what we've come to expect from the show, which is high quality comic book TV content. So I just wish CW was better at marketing it, because I feel like this show flies under the radar so much because a lot of people just don't either know its thing, don't really think it's something they'd be interested in. Like, I know a lot of people in real life who have not watched Stargirl or who have no interest in watching it, who are into comic book shows because they've seen the teasers that CW has put out for the show, and they're like, that does not look good at all. And I agree with them. The teasers don't look good at all. But the show is not that. The show is so good. It really kind of annoys me that the marketing for this show is so bad, because it really could have a huge audience if they actually just gave it, you know, the kind of stuff it deserved. But anyway, not going to go off on a tangent about that. That's a video for another day. But yeah, the show just feels so cozy and comfortable, and it's kind of the show that, well, I'm not hyped before it starts. Once it does start, I'm so on board with it, and I'm so into it. And this episode definitely gave me more season 1 vibes than season 2. And by that I mean that feels like the return to the big sort of scale that we had in season 1, where all of the characters are kind of in the episode at once, at one time. There's a lot of big things happening. Season 2 was great, but I felt like other than the final, we never really got a whole lot of episodes that felt like it was on the scale of season 1. And I think that that's very much due in part to COVID, because originally I thought it was one of two things: COVID, or the fact that the show was not on DC Universe anymore in season 2, and that they may have not had a lot of the advantages they had in DC Universe now that they're a CW only show. But since the season 3 premiere seemed to be much more in line with what I remember from season 1, I think that it's probably just that season 2 was very much COVID hurt, and that now that they're kind of not out of it, but now that things are a lot easier and they can shoot a lot more free, then I think that they definitely have had a lot of the restrictions they had in season 2 lifted. And I think that that really does show, because they still managed to handle season 2 so well, like just deciding to set the show during summer school and all that sort of stuff to really kind of alleviate the fact that they could not fill the cast or the big scenes up near as much. And I think it shows now in season 3 that they're back to a lot of what we saw before, and this was a great premiere. Almost all of the big characters were visited, other than kind of Mr. Bones and that whole plot line and Jade and that. I think we've seen pretty much every single big character, every single character who's going to be a player in this season. The Pat and Sylvester stuff was something that really kind of stuck out to me as a real highlight of the episode. And I just thought the two characters were working great together, because we have not seen the two characters interact a whole lot at all yet, but I think they did a great job at establishing the history between these two characters. Because, like, yes, we've heard about the history, but it's kind of hard to show that history when we haven't really seen a lot of it. We've seen probably, what, 4 or 5 flashback episodes that were more or less cameos for Sylvester, where he was there with Pat. So I feel like they did a great job at, and I'm talking about the actors here, that Joe McHale and Luke Wilson did a great job at kind of showcasing a history between Sylvester and Pat, despite the fact that they would not have acted out that history in so many other episodes. So huge props to them for really managing to make it feel like these are two characters with a history, with a true friendship. Now, one thing that I've kind of been critical about in the past few seasons, and this isn't a writing issue, or this isn't an issue with the show, this is just an issue with the characters themselves, that I think is completely intentional, so it's not a problem. But one thing that I've kind of brought up before is that I feel like Sylvester has always been shown to be a bit of a dick to Pat in the past episodes, and I mean the pilot episode in season 1 is the biggest showcase of this, where Pat's like, okay, I'll try and take up the cosmic staff, and then Sylvester, on his what he believes to be deathbed, is like, no, not you, anybody but you. I understand these are two characters that are friends. They probably give each other, the kind of the friendly slagging a lot of people give their friends. But I don't know. I feel like what we've seen of the two characters in the past never really felt anything more than Sylvester believing he is superior to Pat. And I always kind of didn't like that about the character, because in my head I really wanted to like Sylvester and Starman, because just in general, Joe McHale plays him great. He seems like a really cool character, and I thought that he could be a huge advantage to the team if he ever showed up in present day. But it was also hard for me to get into that mindset when the dialogue was always telling us that Sylvester was a little bit of a dick to Pat. So I think as well, something I said in season 2, because I did reviews for most of season 2, I believe, and I think I said in one of them was that when Sylvester showed up in present day with Pat, I was really hoping that he would be not as much of a dick and very much kind of, Pat, I can't believe you're alive, I've missed you so much, you're one of my closest friends, sort of thing, and not like, so you've been hanging out with the staff, oh, how'd you manage that, I didn't realise you had it in you, that sort of thing. Now thankfully, I think a lot of the season 3 premiere did showcase that on Sylvester. I feel like it did showcase that he is very respectful and appreciative, and just all around very happy to see Pat in general. But then there was still tiny hints of that, like the scene where he said that Pat could be his sidekick now again, I felt was a little in line with the Sylvester from the flashbacks. That's not a bad thing at all. I think they really, if they keep that balance, it'd be good, showing that Sylvester still sort of has that slight annoyance and arrogance to him, like that hasn't gone away, but he is much more understanding of how genuinely important Pat is. Like during the stripe scene, he'd actually said to Pat that he would have been at the table if he'd had this back in the day. So I think that that shows that Sylvester now understands that Pat is just as much of a hero as any of them, and not somebody who would never be allowed onto the JSA table, which is what I think we were led to believe in the flashbacks, is that other than Jay Garrick, and that was kind of it, the rest of the JSA never really respected Pat to the degree he deserved, and I thought that it was kind of made clear that they would never have let Pat sit on the JSA table. Like they never thought he was that good of a character, or not good of a character, but not as good of a person, which always did a little bit annoy me, because Pat is such a great character. Now again, none of this is problems with the writing or the show. This is just kind of something I thought about in terms of the characters themselves, and I think this is all completely intentional, so they've done a great job at it. I'm just hoping that as the season continues on, however much more Sylvester we get, I hope that they keep that where it's a line of the character being both respectful and appreciative. Now, I'm not entirely sure how much Sylvester is going to be in this season, because in this episode, for example, I think he was called a special guest rather than a regular, and it was kind of noticeable for me personally how much they had him on set, because he wasn't actually in a crazy amount of the episodes, but they spread his scenes out well in this episode, that it wasn't too noticeable. But I thought that it was kind of clear that they only had him for a certain amount of time, and that they kind of shot his scenes in a way to make it look like he was more involved in the overall episode than he actually was. I'm hoping he's involved more in the next couple episodes, but normally it's a case of a character like this is in the premiere more than they are in most of the rest of the episodes until the final, so I'm hoping that's not the case. But I wouldn't be surprised if we don't get an overly big amount of Sylvester. I wouldn't be surprised if he's in the next 2 or 3 episodes and then he leaves or goes off and does something and then comes back later on in the season. I think that is really possible to happen. One thing about the character is that, I don't know, I was getting weird vibes that there's something up with Sylvester, whether it's that he's working with somebody, whether that he's being controlled and he doesn't realize it, I don't know. But I feel like there's definitely a lot more behind that, just because there were so many nice scenes between him being just genuinely nice and acceptant of Pat and of Courtney and stuff, that I feel like something more is going on. Infotex, my friend Darren, he brought up that he thinks Sylvester might have been the one who killed the gambler, and that would line up a lot for me. I think that that would make a lot of sense of something that happens down the line, so it would be cool to see what they do there. The scene where the Dugan family came back to the house, that felt like a scene straight out of Community, and I think that that was completely intentional. They made a Community reference with the whole facial hair bit, but just the way Joel McHale was talking and was like, Mike, getting facial hair is a man's right, you'll get there someday, and then Mike's like, I shave, and then Sylvester's like, do you? That whole bit just felt like it was a scene straight out of Community season 1 or something, and I think that was completely intentional, but it was really cool anyway. Speaking of that scene, and speaking of the whole opening montage in general, they have done a great job at connecting this show and what's currently happening to the comic, to the Earth Prime Stargirl comic that came out over the show's hiatus. And the reason why I'm shouting this out more than anything else is because currently Stargirl is the only show to have made such connections to the comic. Stargirl isn't even on Earth Prime. They had no reason to be as connected to the comic and such as they were. Now, to be fair, it is completely possible and likely that this was actually written and filmed before the comic came out, because Stargirl Season 3 has been finished filming since like April or March or something. The comic only came out in May or June, so it's honestly very likely that this whole episode was in the can being edited by the time they were writing the comic, so it was super easy to tie everything in. But it's still the only show so far that has tied into the comic to make the comic completely sort of canonized, I guess. Because Superman and Lois, for example, that whole pulling that out of the Arvors thing completely ruins their part of the comic, because it makes it not make a whole lot of sense, especially since we have like a future Clark Kent in one of the later parts of the comic. Flash, I think, will definitely tie into the comic in season 9, but until then, Stargirl is officially the only show that has made reference and connected to the comic, so huge props to that. In terms of the core characters like Courtney, Bet, Rick, Yolanda, I feel like Courtney clearly got the most to do. Bet and Rick didn't really get a lot. They kind of had only a couple lines of dialogue, I think, in the entire episode. That is very reminiscent of season 2, whenever they didn't have the characters centered around them. It felt like they didn't have a whole lot to do. So I'm hoping that that's just kind of a premiere thing and not really indicative of how their characters are going to be for the rest of the season. Now, one criticism that I have that is to do with the show and is to do with the writing, I think, is the Yolanda versus Cindy conflict they have going. Now, I understand they need to play that up, because it would be stupid for Yolanda to just forgive Cindy and be cool with her being on the team immediately. But they brought that up so many times in this episode that I feel like it can get old very fast if they continue it past this point. Now, obviously, I don't think Cindy killed the gambler. That's pretty clearly a misdirect. It would not be that easy of them to kind of go, oh, maybe it's Cindy, and it turns out it is Cindy. I think she's definitely innocent, but I think that as well is going to be something that Yolanda will keep drawing up. And sure, it makes sense for her character to be like this, but as a viewer, it can get annoying very, very fast to constantly be beat over the head with this kind of plot line. So I'm hoping that's something they sort of dial down, or they come to an agreement between Yolanda and Cindy fairly soon. But yeah, I thought this was a really solid premiere. I really enjoyed it. I think it was great to revisit everybody. It's great to get back to this show again, because it, like I said, it's a show that you kind of forget about when it's not on. It's super underrated, but when it is on, it's so good. But how did you feel about the premiere? Did you like it? Did you hate it? If you're not subscribed yet, please do so. Subscribers always help out the channel, and I'm going to try to keep making Stargirl videos. With college back next week, it's going to be hard to kind of really do much, but I'm still going to try to. Over the next couple of days, I want to try and get a video out talking about Bruno Mannheim as the potential villain for Superman and Lois Season 3, especially since Chad L. Coleman just got cast as the villain. But yeah, thank you very much for watching, and I hope you have a great day.